George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Welcome to the mother of all talk shows. 1.5 million people watched this show in the last 7 days. Can you believe it? None of our opponents can, though none of them ever mention us. We have no promotional budget, virtually no budget to make the show, yet we are the biggest such show in the Anglosphere. Just think about that. Elon Musk, is he going to save Twitter? Joe Biden, is he facing a night of the long knives on Tuesday? Imran Khan was almost murdered this week. What comes next in Pakistan? And Rashid Sunak, the British Prime Minister, go figure. How is he faring in his attempt to recover from the burning effigy of 44 days that is the Prime Ministership of Liz Truss? And how goes the war in Ukraine? And Benjamin Netanyahu is back, and this time he's Mr. Nice Guy. Well, have you seen the guys that he's going to be in coalition with? I tell you, we're going to tour the world horizon this evening with two of the best guests that anyone could wish for. And we're taking your calls and messages and donations all night, because I'm not going to rest until that number is 2 million. And the mother of all talk shows is on 5 nights a week. Ambitious? Well, that's my middle name. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. As Betty Davis once said, it's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Imran Khan is the rightful Prime Minister of Pakistan, a country of nearly 300 million people and lots of nuclear weapons to boot, and situated in one of the most geostrategically sensitive areas of the entire world, with a border with Iran, with a border with Afghanistan, with an ironclad relationship with China. The Prime Minister was removed in a US regime change operation the day that he was in Moscow signing a deal with President Putin for advantageous supply of both energy and foodstuffs. It was as clear as a regime change operation as I've ever seen, and I've been watching them for 50 whole years. Imran Khan is a friend of mine, but I'm not his party man. I never supported the PTI. And in an election, if I was a Pakistani, in the past at least, he would not have got my vote. But because I recognize when the US long arm of regime change operations is at work, I immediately swung behind the rightful and legitimate Prime Minister. This judgment was buttressed by the fact that the only people that the Americans could find to put in Imran Khan's stead were the sweepings of the Police Gazette floor. The front page of the wanted list was placed in power. Virtually every cabinet minister that the Americans put in power in Islamabad was wanted for high crimes and misdemeanors, usually involving the absconding of large sums of public money and the corrupt workings of a long and deeply corrupt Pakistani political class. I was buttressed also by an important fact that I have to mention. My conclusion that this was an American operation and that the new government of Pakistan was entirely legitimate was buttressed by the absolute silence from my former friends. You see, although I was never close to Imran Khan, I was for more than 30 years at the side of the slain martyr Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. Indeed, I campaigned to save the life of her father, the martyr Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. I cradled the baby Bilawal Bhutto, now the foreign minister in the American government in Islamabad. In my arms as a baby, I carried him around as a toddler. I was one of his mother's closest friends. None of them have been in touch with me to complain or to explain why I was wrong about my conclusion. A voluble, eloquent statement that I was right, because they at least have shown me the respect of knowing that they couldn't pull the wool over my eyes. If they thought they could, they'd have been on the phone saying, "You've got this completely wrong." But my phone has been silent. And of course, people ask me, one comrade of mine asked me today, well, why would the Americans want this regime change operation? The answer is this: they want Pakistan to be a reliable base for them, as it was throughout the 1980s in their attempt to destabilize and, if possible, regime change Kabul and Afghanistan. They want to use Pakistan as a tool to help destabilize Russia's near abroad in Central Asia. And, if possible, they want to break that ironclad relationship between Pakistan and China. That's why they need a pliant government in Islamabad, and they did not regard Imran Khan, given his dalliance with Moscow, as being pliant enough. Now, I'm not saying that everything Imran Khan says is correct. I'm not saying that anything that he is proposing is necessarily the right thing, the right way forward. In fact, I have several criticisms of the revolution that he is now leading. The principal one is this: in the words of the French revolutionary Saint-Just, he who half makes a revolution is digging his own grave. And if Imran Khan thinks that he can rouse tens of millions of the poorest Pakistanis, of the Pakistani masses, for the revolutionary overthrow of a stooge regime, and then go back to business as usual, operating the same discredited institutions that they keep talking about in Pakistan, and preserving the corrupt class relationships that exist in Pakistan, then he is digging his own grave. Either the enemy will kill him before he gets there, or the masses will turn on him in their disillusionment. Having roused them, having brought them onto the streets in unprecedented numbers, Imran Khan will have to deliver something to the poor masses of Pakistan. And for that, he'll have to shed the illusions in the Potemkin parliamentary system bestowed on Pakistan by the British colonizers 75, 80 years ago. He will have to shake himself from the illusion that the Pakistani courts are anything but a fig leaf for the naked dictatorship of that other institution whose name they are almost always afraid to speak. I refer, of course, to the army. Anyone who thinks they can make revolutionary change in Pakistan whilst leaving an army that is bought and paid for by the United States of America in power, in pole position, is digging their own grave. This mistake was made in the 1970s. They should have been swept away. A people's army, like the Chinese People's Liberation Army, should have been introduced in Pakistan. It's time to tear the ill-gotten gold braid from the general class in Pakistan and send them homewards, preferably into well upholstered exile. A complete change, upside down, has to occur in Pakistan if meaningful change is to occur. But let's return to the president. The present now is this. Imran Khan has bullets in his leg, a top, a trailer, a container. It was all so redolent to me. I spoke to the late Benazir Bhutto the very night before she left Dubai to return to Pakistan on her ill-fated Via Dolorosa, which led to her crucifixion at the hands of the very same armed forces that are behind the murder attempt on Imran Khan this week. I begged her not to go, if you want to know the truth, but she was determined to face what she must have known was her fate. The fate suffered by her father, the fate suffered by two of her brothers, and I pray to God none other in her family. She must have known that she was going into the valley of death, but she went. And I had the same sense of foreboding when I saw Imran Khan on top of that container, and when I saw the man draw his weapon and fire his bullets, which killed one, wounded many, and put 4 bullets in the leg of Imran Khan, I was filled with dread. Although the slow crucifixion of Imran Khan is not completed yet, although the Pharisees in this picture are the local hirelings that the US has put in power, the Romans in this picture are in Washington, D.C. The responsibility for the attempt to murder Imran Khan lies in Washington, D.C. I'll take your calls on these matters. Of course, I realize that what I'm saying is contentious. I realize that it's not over yet, that Imran Khan's long march continues. I realize that this may not be the last attempt on his life. But I caution him thus, if he is watching. Don't be dishonest with the people. Don't pretend to them that there's any easy walk to freedom. The thousands that besieged the army headquarters in Rawalpindi in the last couple of days will have to become millions. These generals will have to know that if they fire upon the people, that the people will tear them limb from limb. These generals need to know, and the ordinary Jawan needs to know, that this revolution has become unstoppable, that there will be no return to the status quo ante of corrupt oligarchies ruling the roost in Pakistan, whoever is in the Prime Minister's house, with the ultimate arbiter being the chief of the army staff. It's time to sweep all of this away. Now, talking about Washington, Joe Biden is facing the trial of his life, though he almost certainly doesn't know it. He may not even know what day it is or where he is. But on Tuesday, the people of the United States of America seem poised to deliver a verdict which is thoroughly deserved on the so-called Democratic so-called party and the administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. If I were an American, I'd be staying at home on Tuesday. I'm not going to go so far as to ask people to vote for the Republican candidate, but we have to stop the war. And Joe Biden is taking the whole world helter-skelter down, down, down towards the hell of a thermonuclear exchange of weapons over Ukraine. And for that matter, steaming into more and more trouble in the Taiwan Straits, in the South China Sea, in the Indo-Pacific. The crazed, unhinged idea of an America emaciated by the COVID crisis, its crisis of production, its Ponzi scheme currency, and the tectonic plates of the economy shifting towards the east, can fight and win a war against both Russia and China at the same time is so crazed, so unhinged, it belongs on the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And the American people are going to be required to step forward and apply what is a coup de grace in the back of the head of the US Democratic Party. Because if they do not, all of us may die. You may think that that is an exaggeration. But this is the week in which the Pentagon admitted that American forces were now in Ukraine. Polish forces for NATO are in Ukraine in their tens of thousands. Many of them are being killed. Just look at the death notices and the passports taken from the bodies of the servicemen killed on the battlefield. NATO, Poland, and now the United States are inside the war zone. And as Kit Clarenberg again, for the Grey Zone again, has just revealed, the British are up to their old nefarious tricks. Perfidious Albion is at work again in the Crimea, setting up what they call a partisan army to fight the Russians behind the lines, to fight against the civil administration in the Crimea, which represents well over 95% of the people there who are, of course, Russian people. Russia will never allow the Crimea to return to the discredited coup regime in Kiev. The idea that it will is a wild fantasy, the kind of wild fantasy that encouraged the charge of the Light Brigade in the Crimea 150 or more years ago. Into the guns they charged. That's exactly what the British are planning. They're ready to fight to the last Ukrainian to try and weaken, divide, slow, and if possible, regime change Russia. It's a fantasy of imperial delusion, and yet it is still being indulged in London. Russia now knows that it was the British that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Russia now knows that it was the British that led the attack on the demilitarized grain corridor in Sebastopol. Russia now knows that it was the British that attacked the civilian infrastructure of the Kerch Bridge. The British now make no attempt to hide the fact that they have de facto declared war on Russia. So far, it has been a war in only one direction. But that may well be about to change. And who could complain if it did? If Russia were now to retaliate against the British aggression against Russian people, Russian infrastructure, German infrastructure, European Union infrastructure, who could complain? Well, the answer, of course, will be everyone will complain. They will cry foul, but cry they will. If I were in charge of Russian affairs, I could think of many ways to punish the British state for its perfidious, nefarious involvement in the Ukraine imbroglio. But because I'm British, and because I seek to represent the British people, I beg Russia not to carry out these acts. But that requires the British people to show that they oppose the role their government has chosen in the Ukrainian imbroglio. And so far, that has been silent. The onrush of nuclear war has not provoked a return to life of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, CND, born in Britain, famous throughout the world, its logo an emblem of peace throughout the world. Where are they? It has not provoked the Stop the War coalition, to shake themselves of their third campism and get out onto the streets arguing against the onrush of World War III. Where are the Stop the War coalition? And of course, no one should have any illusion that the so-called opposition, so-called Labour Party, will do that job for them. I have so much more I want to say, but time is against me. So how about this factoid? I've just learned from James Melville, our indefatigable contributor, that COP27, that Rishi Sunak has foolishly U-turned and is now headed for Cairo, a country incidentally governed by a military dictatorship. How about that then? Is on his way to COP27, which is sponsored by Coca-Cola, a conference sponsored by the company responsible for 120 billion plastic bottles which foul the environment and the seas across the world, is sponsoring COP27. You couldn't make it up. Unfortunately, you have no need to, because it is entirely true. Fasten your seatbelts. There's some great guests coming up, because it's the mother of all talk shows.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Fisher says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
You may agree or disagree with me. Either way, you are most welcome to phone the show. If you're in the UK and Ireland, the number is 08 081 965522. It's entirely free of charge. You call us, we'll call you back. If you're in the US or Canada, it's +1 844 944 3344. And again, it's toll free, cost you nothing. You call us, we'll call you back. If you're in the rest of the world, it's 44 203 966 2625. That's 44 203 966 2625. We've got a poll running. Will Elon Musk save Twitter? And I've got to tell you, Mr. Musk, it is a close run thing. On my Twitter feed, it's yes, 56%, no, 44%. On YouTube, it's yes, 41%, no, 59%. And on Telegram, usually the most perspicacious of the platforms so far as polls, it is yes, only 37%, no, 63%. We'll discuss later, I hope, what we mean by saving Twitter, because it surely needs saving. But you can get your vote in on my Twitter feed, on my YouTube. Please subscribe and like the show if you are watching on YouTube, and on my Telegram. That's t.me/George Galloway. So Tuesday is the big day in the United States of America. Poor Biden probably doesn't know that, but he's in for a rude awakening if the polls are correct. Who better to tell us if they are than the clean-cut all-American boy? He's handsome, he's cute, and he's razor sharp. He's Jackson Hinkle, the political analyst and host of The Dive, and welcome returnee to the mother of all talk shows. Jackson, are the polls right? Are the Democrats headed for defeat?
Yeah, I mean, assuming that we have a fair and free election, I think that the Democrats are headed for a pretty terrible wake-up call come that Tuesday. It's going to be bad. We know that the American public is suffering right now when it comes to bread and butter issues, when it comes to inflation, the economy, crime in major cities, for example. And all the while, the Democratic Party is doing nothing to try and help contain these issues or take a course of action that might address these issues. They're sending $60 billion to Ukraine, as we all know, and they're currently preparing to send another $50 billion or more over to Ukraine, despite the fact that the American public is done with Ukraine. And they're trying to also say that the problems that the American public is witnessing and living each and every day don't exist. I saw Joy Reid go out on MSNBC just this week, and she said that the Republicans are engaging in an election front of trying to encourage or educate the American public as to what inflation is, because average Americans didn't use the term inflation, presumably before the Republicans launched their midterm election campaign. So it's just really incredible to see what they're doing and the fact that they are not addressing any of the problems that average Americans are facing.
Well, their election platform seems to be, let's send more and more of America's money to a place called Ukraine that virtually no American could identify on a map. About January 6, which was a storm in a teacup, it would have been a quiet afternoon on the streets of Paris with the yellow vests on the street and so on. And Donald Trump, the specter of Donald Trump, that's their election platform. Nothing about prices, nothing about jobs, nothing about rents, about student debt, about the crises, multiple crises on all kinds of issues that the American public faces. Who's advising these people, Jackson?
The people advising the Democratic Party are the same people who are, they're wheeling Joe Biden out to have his morning cereal. You know, these people, they don't know what is good for the future of this country because they are not living the lives of average Americans. They simply are so out of touch that they don't even understand what this country is facing right now. And they're also the ones that are pushing the propaganda that free speech is bad, that the right to bear arms is uniquely evil, that the 1776 revolution was like an anti-American project that we should all hate. As Americans, you know, this is the fabric of what we see our country to be. And these people, the globalists, are trying to unravel this fabric, tear apart this country bit by bit. And that's their goal at the end of the day. That's their project. They are taking cue from the World Economic Forum and from Klaus Schwab, rather than listening to the concerns and the hardships of Americans all across the country who don't have any real jobs, who have lost the manufacturing base and the industrial base in this country at a time when China is lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, and they're working on industrializing their country and helping people in rural communities and offering to the rest of the world to join their Belt and Road Initiative, even the United States to join the Belt and Road Initiative. The United States is saying, no, we're going to entrap ourselves further in this hyper financialized market where everyone works a service job and everyone is working for Uber or Starbucks. And it's really just ruining our country.
Yeah, I mean, let's take that freedom of speech thing. I've lived so long, I've got to tell you, Jackson, that everything is reversed. The left that used to cry foul and decry the dogs of war of the American military-industrial complex, of the FBI and the CIA. The left is now their greatest defenders and exalters, and it's the people on the right that are opposing the endless feeding of war against Russia. I've lived so long that people on the left who used to cry out for freedom of speech and against the ability of media oligarchs to silence the public discourse, now being the greatest champions of censorship. So Musk comes along, for example, and says that he's going to reverse at least some of the anti-free speech policies of Twitter, the biggest of the public squares. Who's organizing the backlash? It's the so-called left, in conjunction with some of America's biggest corporations, who are now pulling their advertisements from Twitter. It's a funny old world, as Margaret Thatcher once said.
Yeah, well, I'm always of the mindset that I'll believe it when I see it. And I'd imagine you are as well. So Elon Musk, I think that he's going to try to make a difference. I do think he's earnest. Maybe he has mixed motives. I'm sure the Pentagon would be happy if every single person that's currently anonymously using Twitter is verifiable and identifiable and can be placed on a blacklist much easier than previously. And this whole Twitter verification process is going to help them in that effort. But I also think that there's benefits to this because you're going to effectively root out a lot of this troll behavior on Twitter, maybe take a step closer to freedom of speech on the internet. I'm hopeful. I have yet to see what's going to happen, but I don't really trust any of these people, any of these individuals in elite positions of power. I mean, you bring up the Republicans and how they are fighting back against this endless war, proxy war in Ukraine that we are really digging ourselves into right now. I remember a day, and it's not like they hide it. I mean, Barack Obama literally wrote about this in his autobiography. I remember a day when Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi were out giving speeches about how they were going to stop the funding of the war in Iraq and how it was the worst thing that we could have ever done as a country. So as with anything, with these people who are in positions of power, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not hopeful for Kevin McCarthy to actually stay true to his word about stopping funding for Ukraine. And I don't know what's going to happen with Elon Musk, but wishing for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to turn to the Republicans. I'm not a Trump supporter, and neither are you. Neither are most people, I suspect, who are regular viewers of this show. But Trump started far less trouble in the world, although he did start trouble, fewer wars than the others that went before him. And he is actually the only one of the top-line political actors in the United States who is actually talking any sense about the war in Ukraine. How does Tuesday and its aftermath look for him, do you think?
I think it's looking really good for him moving forward. And I saw some reports that he's planning to potentially announce his bid for presidency very soon. I saw some reports indicating maybe around November 14th, but we have yet to see what he's going to do. But what I do think is going to happen is you are going to have this massive, power grab from people within the camp of Ron DeSantis, trying to take up the donors of Donald Trump, trying to take up the supporters of Donald Trump. And I think this is what we are going to see as the major power struggle in the 2024 elections. I don't think it's going to be Democrat versus Republican. I think it's going to be a fight within the Republican Party as to who is going to run this country. And yeah, like you said, I'm not a Trump fan. I support the MAGA base, and I think that they're great, and I think that they have good instincts, and I hope that they don't side with Ron DeSantis, because in my view, Ron DeSantis is the greatest evil that our country faces. I mean, He is a neoconservative to his core when it comes to these foreign policy issues. And he's trying to win over Trump supporters by being populist or traditional on domestic issues. But at the end of the day, we're headed towards World War III with either Russia or China or both. We are moving into this multipolar world increasingly, and we just saw this with China, with Xi Jinping and Olaf Scholz this week. The world is being sectioned off into these blocks yet again, and we need a leader who is going to be the least likely of all to take us further down that path of world war. Ron DeSantis is going to take us down that path. Trump, could he? Yes. But is he less likely than Ron DeSantis? I think so. And I think that's why there's so many people in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party that are very worried about him right now.
Finally, and I'm grateful for your time, Jackson, once upon a time, the Democratic Party was always rotten, as far as I'm concerned. I grew up under democratic wars being fought across the world, but there was always a section of the Democratic Party that you could look to and admire. I'm thinking of the Kennedys. I'm thinking of some others who were always, if you like, there was an anti-war rump in the Democratic Party. There was a pro-trade union rump in the Democratic Party. There was a pro-people section of the Democratic Party. They were always the minority, but they always existed. People like McCarthy and Kennedy and so on. Now it seems an undifferentiated mass of rottenness. I can't tell you how much I despise the Democratic Party. Am I going too far?
No, you're not going too far. It's a very accurate observation you make. And you're especially right when you bring up the likes of the Kennedys. I mean, there you have a family who, during John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, these individuals were maybe not necessarily anti-war, but they valued détente, they valued diplomatic relations, they valued trying to strive for peace. And they were up against very, very powerful actors like the Dulles brothers, for example. It seems as though today the power structure within the party has been entirely swamped by the ideology of Dulles brothers type figures, individuals that are beholden to the intelligence community, beholden to the State Department. Even today, we look at the State Department versus the Pentagon, because I feel like there is a little bit of a power dynamic between these two entities. And the Pentagon is more aligned with the Republican Party of today. The State Department is more aligned with the Democratic Party of today. The Pentagon, we're getting voices out of like Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who are calling for peace between Russia and Ukraine, not calling for war with China. We don't have any voices in the Democratic Party that value détente. And it's a very unique point in history. No other generation of American leaders would have been as pro-war, regardless of the outcome, as we're seeing today from the likes of Joe Biden, William Burns, Victoria Nuland, Antony Blinken, so on and so forth. And it's why I'm very worried about the future of my country.
Well, we had the squad, but they turned into the bomb squad.
I like that. That's true. It's true. I mean, and now you see there, I'm sure you've seen the videos of average Americans going out and confronting the squad at their rallies, at their speeches, at campaign events. People from their own districts that are taking off work to go and confront them and say, why are you funding World War III? Why are you taking us one step closer towards nuclear annihilation? And they have nothing to say, because if they were to answer honestly, they would have to tell the public that this is just what Nancy Pelosi wants. This is just what our Democratic donors want. And I can't go against them because they are not willing to challenge power. It's so sad, because I'm sure many believed that individuals like AOC were maybe going to provide a new path in the Democratic Party, an anti-war path, a peace economy, if you will, because that's what they campaigned on. But now they've just become rank tools of the establishment.
Jackson Hinkle, as always, great wisdom in one so young. Thank you for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. That's Jackson Hinkle, the host of The Dive. Do check out his work and follow him on social media. Will Elon Musk save Twitter? You can vote on my Twitter feed, on my YouTube channel, and on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. Let me take a break, and then it's your calls.
From the makers of Where's the WMDs? Who killed Epstein and pinned the blame on the Democratic donkey? Comes the brand new game, Where's Biden Hiding? Play the tapes. Figure out what the hell he's trying to say.
It is me, Joe Biden.
Try and find Where's Biden Hiding? Where's Biden hiding? We can't find him. This product is fictional and is not available in your local burn-down store. But seriously, if anyone finds him, please let us know.
Big thanks, obviously, to all our subscribers and listeners to the MOATS podcast. For the older amongst you, a podcast is the distilled version, about half as long, which has become a phenomenon on the internet. So it's a media phenomenon, and it's tearing up the mainstream media monopoly. Please download it on Apple or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review, like Sanam in London, who said, George, I've been watching your show for a long time, and I must admit that you are a true leader and very courageous man to carry on your work of exposing the truth and showing us the other side of the picture, which always gets blocked by the US and the West through their media. God bless you always. Sanam in London. Very touching, Sanam. Thank you very much for that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
The poll's going well, and it's very, very close. Will Elon Musk save Twitter? If you're watching, Elon, you're kind of neck and neck. MOATS phone numbers, UK and Ireland, 08081 965522. Toll free, as they say in America. And if you're in America or Canada, it's +1 844 944 3344. If you're elsewhere in the world, it's 44203 966 2625. Now, as I told you, we are trying to get from twice a week to 3 times a week, and ultimately to 5 times a week. Why not? Newsnight is on 5 nights a week and nobody watches it. We've got millions watching this show, and the way to do that is to support us on Super Chat. If you're watching on YouTube, please donate on the Super Chat mechanism, and if you're not on YouTube, then go to our website, moats.tv, and donate there. Naim Alabed donated $10. Thank you, Naim. Daniel Hamilton donated £2 Thank you, Daniel. Michael Flamson, £4.49. Thanks, Michael. Hamilton, Ontario, gives 20 Canadian dollars. Thanks for telling it like it is. Very refreshing in this day and age. Thanks, Hamilton. Remborn, a regular donor, gives 50 British pounds. Thank you, sir. Harry McLegs donated $20. Terry Bassett donated £2 Sleepy Joe must go, says Terry. Joe, no war. Marie-Therese Hughes donated £5. Thank you, Marie. Daniela Modos Cutter donated £3.49. Blunts and Otters, I always think that's naughty, donated $4.99. When is Tulsi Gabbard coming on the show? Well, we've invited her many times, and I invite her again now. Tulsi, I think you should do it. Let's go to the phone lines. First to Wales, where Richard is in Newton. Go ahead, Richard.
Good evening, George. Health and strength to you, my friend. Tonight,
Thank you.
I've got a comment rather than a question. It's about my suspicion and frustrations of the lack of coverage on mainstream media about the fact that France and Germany were guarantors to the Minsk II. Yet there's nothing.
Good point.
Yeah, there's nothing being said or told about it, and I'm so frustrated and annoyed.
Well, it's a very good point. Nobody knows about the Minsk agreements. Still less do they know that Germany and France guaranteed it. And still less do they know that this became the property of the United Nations Security Council. How's that for a triple betrayal? The Minsk agreement was signed by the Ukrainian regime, guaranteed by France and Germany on behalf of the EU, and then the Security Council of the United Nations took authorship or responsibility for the Minsk II agreements, but they were never implemented. And that's why we've got a war in Ukraine. Who knew? Well, nobody, if it was left to our gallant regiment of liars in the mainstream media. Richard, great call. Michael is in Minneapolis. He's always worth hearing. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, George, how you doing?
Good, sir. Nice to hear from you again.
So it's good to be on the show. So as regards to Elon Musk buying Twitter, it seems like he's maybe stepped into it a little bit because he doesn't seem to know how to run it. He fired half his employees already, including a lot of the content moderation team. And now due to that, to firing all the content moderators, he's got advertisers pulling out. So I guess it seems like, and then now he wants to have people pay to get a blue check. Well, if anyone can pay to get a blue check, then it's easy to imitate other people and have names that are very close to theirs. And then all of a sudden, being verified on Twitter doesn't mean anything. And I just think what Twitter is a collection of users, right? It's journalists, it's politicians, it's entertainers, it's scientists. That's what makes it valuable, is that you have all those people that the advertisers can advertise to. And if Musk is going to drive those people away from the platform, then that seems like a big problem, don't you think? Or where are you at on this, George? I'm really curious.
I really don't agree with you. First of all, I think that having a blue tick is meaningless now anyway. I have had a blue tick for many, many years. And I had a television show made by Associated Press and carried on the now banned RT channel. And I never had a label calling me Russia state-affiliated media.
Right.
When RT was closed down and my show ended, I then got a label saying I was Russia state-affiliated media, which wouldn't have troubled me overly. Yeah, it wouldn't have troubled me ordinarily, but of course it comes with almost complete suppression of my output. My lawyers estimate that some 88% of my now 444,000 followers never see a tweet of mine. So
I rarely see your tweets, so I can confirm that.
Yeah, well, there you go. There you go. So therefore, my blue tick was meaningless. The company's losing $4 million a day. $4 million a day. You may well ask, I do actually, Michael, how a company that's losing $4 million a day can be worth $44 billion to buy, but hey, that is late capitalism for you. The people that he sacked are not the content moderators. They're certainly still moderating me. The people he sacked are the human rights team and teams for every kind of greenery and quackery you can imagine. Why did Twitter have them in the first place? And the answer is that Twitter became the property of the liberal classes. It became the property of the chatterati, the commentariat, the liberals who regard anyone one step to the right of them as fascist, and who regard anyone who doesn't swallow whole the latest thing, whether it's global warming or COVID-19 or the Ukraine story or whatever, as beyond the pale and people who should be silenced. So as far as I'm concerned, he hasn't sacked enough of them. There's still too many man buns and man bags and skinny jeans and sneakers in the Twitter headquarters. Go, Elon, get rid of the rest of them too. Angela is in Luton on Imran Khan. Go ahead, Angela.
Hi, George. How are you doing? Good show. Great show tonight,
Good.
actually. So it's interesting what you were saying about Imran Khan. I feel quite strongly that this soft coup that was planned, as Imran Khan calls it, the imported government that was brought in, that was the plan. That is it. Bring in an imported government. And I don't think there was an afterthought about Imran Khan, the fact that he wouldn't go away quietly, the fact that he would stand and fight for his country, and there wasn't a contingency for that. So these whole last 6 months have caught them off guard. Now, you rightly say he's been calling for free and fair election, which would be probably the first time in history of Pakistan for a free and fair election without any corruption. But despite the corruption, the by-elections that have happened in their own backyard in Punjab, he has swept the floor clean, completely swept them clean. So now there's even more of a reluctance to call an election date. It's not going to happen until next year. You're coming into winter now. And I used to think at the time, listening to you talk about it, that, you know, this coup happened in April. How is Imran Khan going to keep the momentum up of people? Actually, it's the opposite. There's a complete exhaustion because there's no politics like Pakistani politics. There's events happening every day, be it assassination attempts, video leaks coming out, you know, people being killed. You obviously know about Urshid Sharif, the journalist who was martyred in Kenya. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens hereafter. If and when he wins the election, he's got the experience of being in a hung parliament, in a coalition. He insists on coming back only if he gets a two-thirds majority, so he can call the shots, and he wants to be able to be above the establishment to the degree that he can make decisions for the country. Complete change for Pakistan. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Is it feasible, given the stronghold of the military?
I really think that is brilliantly analysed, brilliantly observed. This can end only in one of two ways, either in the martyrdom of Imran Khan, and that's a problem for not just him and those that love him, but it's a problem for the country because there's not two Imran Khans. When Benazir was killed, there were other family members. There was a clan. And the Bhutto family has gone on, and the son is now the foreign minister. But Imran Khan is not in that position. There's no second in command, so far as I can see, in his party. Certainly no one with his charisma, his reach amongst the people. That makes him uniquely vulnerable to assassination, of course. It can only end in his martyrdom or his victory. It is literally victory or death for Imran Khan. Now, my money would be on his victory. My money would be on somebody in the armed forces, perhaps further down from the Chief of Army Staff level, who, with a group of officers, says enough is enough. There will be nothing left in Pakistan if this current situation is allowed to develop. Either Khan will be killed and will be blamed, or Khan will come to power at the top of a revolutionary wave which will sweep all of us away. And so some Nasserite army officers, junior officers type group might well step forward and take the reins. But as I said, I hope clearly in my introduction, this will change nothing, just the the name of the person in the Prime Minister's house unless it is accompanied by a radical reshaping of the state of Pakistan. You don't need a puppet Potemkin parliament. You need a powerful president. You need a president who commands the armed forces, not the other way round. You need a judiciary that is not bought and paid for. You need an armed forces that are not actually owned by a foreign country. You should take, as Pakistanis, China as your model. If you had done so in the 1970s, if you'd bolted yourself on to China, look where you'd be today. Think about that. Instead, you bolted yourselves on to a United States of America that holds you in nothing but contempt, where it even thinks about you at all. Wake up, Pakistan. Lester is in Maryland. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, Lester.
Oh, thank you, George. I hope I won't be crushing your optimism, because I feel like you're very optimistic of the change of what's going to happen. We know the Republicans are going to win and take a lot of seats in Congress, and 2024 maybe Trump comes back. But I talk to a lot of people out here in my community, and I've talked to a lot of people like who have been in the military, who are veterans, and a lot of people, when I talk to them about the concerns I have about going to war directly with Russia and China, a lot of them really do believe that the United States could win a war against Russia and China together at the same time. And, I can try to piece to their logic, like say, I mentioned United States kind of did already fight China in the Korean War, and you still lost, and you pretty much lost every other war after that. You think you're going to fight two giants who not only are they very old civilizations, but China and Russia have seen the hardest situations. They've been through it all. Their people are made out of hard stuff, and the United States never been tested the way either China or Russia's been. And it doesn't matter what I say. They're just so heavily consuming the propaganda that somehow our military is invincible, that somehow we're going to defeat both of them. And I feel like a lot of people in the community, it's starting to feel like it's a cult, like a cult of people have just completely been brainwashed, and they're prepared to drink the Kool-Aid full of poison and commit suicide. It just feels that way. I don't know if you're getting that sense now, and I think the world is starting to realize that they got to come up with a way to prevent Armageddon from happening, because if you're hoping for the U.S. Citizens to save the world, then you might as well be hoping that pigs can fly.
Well, God help us with your neighbors, Lester. God save us from them. God strengthen you in the lonely fight to force them to see sense. The obvious problem is that these mad ravings of your neighbors can only be shown to be mad by a war, a thermonuclear, hypersonic, intercontinental World War III. And none of your neighbors would be alive to see how wrong they were. None of us would be alive to see how wrong they were. That's the utterly tragic paradigm into which we are now trapped, that the lunatics have taken control of the asylum, and that the lunatics outside, the sheep outside, are so easily corralled and marched all the way to the slaughterhouse. After the break, we'll talk to a man who lives not very far from Armageddon. I refer to the greatest living Israeli, Gideon Levy of Haaretz newspaper, about the new paradigm that's opened in Israel, where Netanyahu is back, and this time he is Mr. Nice Guy, at least by comparison with the others. Stay tuned, I'll be right back.
I always have been and always will be firmly opposed to any changes in the law to allow assisted dying or assisted suicide. I believe the threat to the dependent, the most vulnerable, the most desperate in our society is simply too great, and therefore assisted dying or legalized assisted suicide must never become law in this country. Thank you, George. Thank you very much.
Bravo, I agree entirely, and spoke, I hope powerfully, in Parliament against this euthanasia, legalized murder. I have the most profound feelings of opposition to it, which, as you say, does not mean that the pressures on people who are terminally ill, who have lost hope, are not themselves profound, and that the pressures on people without pay and without any kind of remittance or relief are condemned to years, decades of caring for people who are terminally ill, helpless, hopeless, and so on, that these are not deep, deep mines of anguish and of pain and of doubt. But I have a moral and religious obligation to oppose it. If capitalism was a person and it could kill anyone that it liked, it would kill the one that will never again turn a penny of profit. It's very easy to imagine relatives, even family members, even husbands and wives that would like to see the back of you, either because they think you've suffered long enough or because they'd quite like to see what's in your will and quite like to spend it. I wouldn't trust, and I don't think you should, anybody to decide whether you live or die. As a religious believer, I believe that that is God's job, not yours. This is a subject we'll have to return.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
I've lost count how many general elections there have been in Israel. The only thing certain about the outcome is who would lose, and that is the Palestinian people living under now permanent occupation by the state of Israel. But it was mildly interesting to me which individual would be leading the Knesset, forming the government. I did not expect a landslide victory, or what passes for one, in the neck-and-neck races in Israeli elections for Benjamin Netanyahu. Neither did I expect that Netanyahu would form a government and he'd be Mr. Nice Guy, at least by comparison with his cabinet colleagues. To explain it all is the renowned Israeli columnist, writer from Haaretz newspaper, and as I say, in my view, the greatest living Israeli. He is, of course, Gideon Levy, and he joins us now. Is it unremitted bad news from the election, Gideon, or were there any rays of sunshine visible on the horizon?
I wouldn't say a sunshine. Good evening, George. Thank you for having me. I wouldn't say sunshine, but it's not total darkness, because what happened now, that maybe the masquerade is over. Once Israel will present its new government, the real face of Israel will appear, and nobody will be able to claim that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, that Israel is a democracy, that Israel is practicing the values of the West, that Israel is the outpost of the West. I think that the results of those elections are not as tragic as some of my friends see them, because they had torn all the masks. And here we are, and that's the real face of Israel.
Yeah, it is depressing truth that the lipstick that was always there, faintly visible, has all been wiped off now, hasn't it? The various liberal political formations that ran, they didn't make it into the Knesset. Am I right?
No, it's worse than this, George, because for many years now, what is called the Zionist left was the nice face of Israel, but it was a fake face. And in many ways, I prefer the truth of the right-wingers on the hypocrisy of the so-called Zionist left or center left, which had nothing to offer, not in terms of leadership, and for sure not in terms of alternative, being an ideological alternative. The real fact is that elections in Israel in recent years are a choice between extreme right-wingers and right-wingers. That's the real Israeli political map.
Yes, now let's talk about those. For most viewers, it's difficult to comprehend that you can get much more right-wing than Netanyahu, but of course we now do. We have the Kahanist leader who is leading, I think, the second or third largest group and is the coming power in Israel, isn't he?
Yeah, Itamar Ben-Gvir is his name, and he became the black horse of those elections. Not surprisingly, he knew to become the third political party, as you mentioned, and the sky is the limit. He can even get farther. We are dealing with a party that in any European country today would be considered as a neo-Nazi party, not less than this. But in Israel, it became a very legitimate party. It will be part of the government. The media is quite supportive, or at least not banning them. And it's totally legitimized to have a neo-Nazi party partner in the Israeli government. I would think that this is unheard of. 20 years ago, it would not be possible, but now it's possible.
Now, from the foundation of the state, and indeed in my early years, even I'm talking in the 1970s, my early years of involvement in this question, Israel was punted as a labor country, had labor unions, the unions owned banks, the kibbutzim were labor socialist experiments and so on. Now labor, having ruled the roost for a quarter of a century, the last time I looked, a couple of days ago, was slated to have 4 MPs out of 120. What next for them?
Look, they lost their way, they lost the leadership, and I think justice prevails in sending them to the bin of history. They used to be over 50 seats 30 years ago, and they hardly made it this time when their partner, Meretz, which is a little bit more to the left, even didn't make it and stayed outside the parliament. Those two parties had a quite impressive past, but a very disturbing present in which they really lost their way. It's very hard to understand what do they stand for, what is their attitude toward the Jewish supremacy in Israel, what is their attitude towards building more settlements and maintaining the occupation. And as such, I don't think it's a great loss that they didn't make it or shrinked to such ridiculous sizes.
So they've been pasoked, effectively. They will now disappear.
right.
Which, of course, as recently as Rabin and so on, was unthinkable. It is a remarkable tectonic shift in Israeli politics, where Netanyahu will be the moderate, neo-Nazi parties, as you described them, will be in the cabinet. That's going to be tricky for all these social democrats around the world who have, for a variety of reasons, had to pledge their unending allegiance to the state of Israel. Or is it? Will they just adjust, in your view?
I'm afraid so. The past told us that the EU and the United States are accepting almost everything from Israel and tolerating everything from Israel. Maybe there will be some condemnations. President Biden didn't call yet Benjamin Netanyahu to wish him good luck. But I think this is just rhetoric. By the end of the day, they will accept any Israeli government. They will support any Israeli government. They will finance any Israeli government. And they will arm any Israeli government, at least for the short future. Maybe for the long run, we will face a different international reality. But for the short run, I don't see the world putting sanctions about Israel or taking any measures that should have been taken years ago.
Now, you and I both know, but not everybody knows, that the so-called peace process is dead and buried now. If it was not dead before, it's 6 feet under now as a result of the election result. There can be no pretense anymore that a two-state solution, as envisaged at Oslo, which I supported, I freely confessed to that error of judgment. The peace process is over. So what's the rhetoric now, Gideon?
That's the point, that there is no rhetoric. The Palestinian problem, the Palestinian issue is off the table, was deleted from the public discourse in Israel. People think that if they don't look at the elephant in the room, the elephant will not exist, will disappear. There is no public debate about what to do with the Palestinian question, and therefore there are no solutions. Nobody deals with it. The world is sick and tired and has different issues to cope with, like the war in Ukraine, like environment, and like immigration. And the Palestinians, again, as you rightly said in your introduction, are those who will pay the price, as usual.
Now let me switch direction slightly. We both know, last time we met, I think we discussed it on a shared platform in Kazakhstan. There's always been a complex relationship between Russia and Israel, and that has been reflected up till now in the Ukraine imbroglio. Israel has not wanted, for a variety of reasons, including Syria and so on, to throw its lot entirely in with the West and the Americans and NATO against Russia. But this new government now, what will their attitude be to that?
I think that in this point of view, there will not be major differences. Netanyahu, for sure, will try to maintain good relations as much as possible with Russia. He is the architect of building the good relations with Vladimir Putin and with Russia. And I think he will try to keep it as much as possible. The question is, what price will Israel pay for its unclear, vague choice in which Israel tries to gain both worlds and to be friendly with Ukraine and not to betray Russia. Usually what happens in those situations is that finally you lose both. But time will show if Israel will be able to continue to juggle, because what we are doing now is juggling between Ukraine and Russia. Netanyahu definitely will try to continue this.
Who'll be the foreign minister, Gideon? Do you know?
No, nobody knows, and it's totally unimportant because Netanyahu will be the one who will form the international relations of Israel. The foreign minister will be a puppet in any case.
Well, how do you attribute this incredible longevity of Netanyahu, winning even when he seemed dead, convicted in courts and so on? What is it about him? What has he got as a political leader that keeps him not just standing but stronger than he was before?
So it's a quite long list of factors. I try to be short. First of all, he is quite an impressive man. I don't know if you met him. I met him a few times. He is an impressive man. He is very knowledgeable. He is sharp, very intelligent, and he is one of those that you cannot ignore when you get to a room. He will be always in the center because he has some kind of charisma, but that's not the whole story. The real story is that Netanyahu found a way to the heart of those who felt discriminated over the years in the Jewish Israeli society. Unlike Labour, who was always perceived as arrogant and as quite elitistic, Netanyahu, who comes from a very elitistic background and very privileged background, still found a path to the heart of those who were always discriminated, namely the Jews from Arab states who are a majority in Israel. And they feel, even though he is not part of them, that he understands them, that he represents them. Netanyahu by himself felt for many years discriminated. His father felt quite excluded from the intellectual milieu of Jerusalem. And all those emotions, because everything is very emotional here, all those emotions somehow are working on mainly the lower classes in Israel, and he's very talented to know to use it for his own interest, and in a very successful way. There was never in Israel such a beloved prime minister and such a hated prime minister. But when he is beloved, he is really beloved by half of the people, like no one before him.
Gideon Levy, stay safe and keep us informed as to how things are going there.
With pleasure,
George. Thank you very much for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Will Elon Musk save Twitter? Yes, 56, no, 44, say Twitter. YouTube, yes, 42, no, 58, say YouTube. And yes, 38, no, 62. You can vote until the end of the show. Here's the telephone numbers again. In the UK and Ireland, 08081965522. In the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. In the rest of the world, 44203 966 2625. After a quick break, it's your calls all the way.
There is no trick other than hard work, creativity, care, and recognizing that duty is more important than love.
The booming voice of Robert Maxwell, an arrogant man who used his publishing empire to gain him power and influence. But in this shocking account, never told before in this way, George Galloway recalls his first encounter with Maxwell.
It looked like a grizzly bear advancing towards me and punches me with these giant fists, like sides of ham, right in the solar plexus, so hard that I literally bent double.
Then, after George exposed Maxwell as a crook in Parliament, it was war.
Every one of his papers, the Daily Mirror, then following the Sunday Mirror, the Sunday People, the Daily Record, then a few days later the Sunday Mail in Scotland, even the European, which he then owned, all over Galloway.
Scottish Daily News journalist Ron Mackay was there.
Every night, presumably when he had a drink in him, he would boom over the tannoy about the cretins, the fools. The majority of the workforce believed that he would take it over and their jobs would be secure. But of course he didn't. He just disappeared.
And then...
The millionaire newspaper publisher Robert Maxwell is dead.
What really happened? Did Robert Maxwell jump, or was he pushed?
It could be that he went out to, as he did, micturate over the side of the boat. I'm with Ghislaine Maxwell in that I lean towards the murder.
This is Maxwell, the monster.
You said, what is my secret? I will let you and your viewers know what it is. I'm not attached to property. Consequently, losing or gaining it means nothing to me.
Well, the poll is going great guns, and it's not great news for Elon Musk. I think the majority feel that he will not save Twitter. Perhaps we'll get a chance to come back to that point at the end. But let's go to the phone lines. Aisha is in London on Imran Khan. Go ahead, Aisha.
Hi, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, good, thanks. What would you like to say?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance to speak and for talking about this important issue and Imran Khan, which is not being talked about as much as it should be. Pakistan is under a fascist government. Pakistan is being dictated left, right, center by foreign countries. As we well know, it's America here. It's Joe Biden who is the main character, along with dirty fishes in the army. Would like to touch upon the recent events. So we've discovered that our army generals and, you know, these guys like to arrest people and strip them naked, beat them up and make videos and then, you know, blackmail them with those videos into doing things that they want them to do. And this is what's been happening. A Senate of Pakistan has been getting threats and videos of him and his wife, private videos, being sent to him. What is this? He's an old man, and this is what's happening. And this is being done by the army that Pakistan thought was, you know, the protectors of our country, the protectors of the people, the voices of the people. But now this army, these dirty fishes of the army, General Faisal, along with a few others, are making the whole country dirty, and they want to strip the people and entertain themselves with this. They are facing the military tanks at the people. This is the state of Pakistan right now. And
No, it's only by the grace of God, Aisha, that Imran Khan was not killed. If you take 4 bullets in your leg, they might as easily have been in your guts or in your chest, and we'd be talking about a dead Imran Khan now. Just speculate, if those bullets had killed Imran Khan. What would be happening in Pakistan right now, do you think?
I think there would be a hurricane in Pakistan, and the first to be attacked would be these army generals, these dirty army generals. Yeah. Because these are the main characters. These are the main characters of the regime change. Without these lot, this couldn't have happened. And we all know well who did this. Chief of Army Staff.
Yes, I agree with you entirely. Unfortunately, not many Pakistanis have yet reached that conclusion, or maybe you think they have finally this week.
The thing is, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear in the people, which Imran Khan is trying to, break down. These army generals, the army, the military are to serve the people. They are answerable to the people. We have all rights to question them, and they have their duty to answer us. We pay taxes, the people of Pakistan pay taxes, and these lot are not doing their job. In fact, we are getting threatened if we say anything about the army. They will take us under custody, they will arrest us, they will strip us naked, they will beat us up, they'll get us killed, as Arshad Sharif has been killed because he was exposing these people, because he was questioning. It's now become a crime to question. Pakistan is meant to be a free country. It was made on the name of freedom, where people can say what they want, believe what they want, preach what they want. And now what's been done is the voices are being silenced. And if they can't do anything, they will kill you. And this is what they're trying to do with Imran Khan, because he's a one-man army. He's a one-man show. That man is brave. That man is our hero.
Best call of the night, or many a night, Aisha in London. Thank you very much. Eve is in Idaho on Ukraine. Go ahead, Eve.
Hello, George. Yes, I wanted to make a comment. I think it has not been talked about a lot about Ukraine. Is the story of the unprovoked aggression of Russia against Ukraine, and this unprovoked, I want to talk about that. And what I wanted to say is that there was a very important agreement between Ukraine and Russia, which is called the Kharkov Agreement. And basically, it was that the basis in Sevastopol was leased. And the West knew that this lease on Sevastopol before 2014, they knew that ultimately when they will push on the button, this lease will not be extended, and essentially the Russian will lose their Black Sea fleet. So it was provoked the whole way. The only existence of this lease showed that the West was controlling the time they were ready to basically attack Russia. That's what I wanted to say, is that...
you said it very clearly and accurately.
Yes, that was my point, yes.
Well, it's very well made. Thanks, Eve, in Idaho, as always. Lance is in Canada. He wants to fight with me about Joe Biden. Come and have a go, Lance, if you think you're hard enough.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, go on.
No,
go on.
I'm not a fan of Biden or Trump. In fact, I think they're both creeps who said very strange things to young girls. Things I'm certain that George Galloway has never done. But anyway, my thought, all I was going to say, my comment was that Trump provided 1,000,000% media cover for Israel. Trump, in my opinion, did nothing for America but talk about making America great. The one thing that Biden did do was, in the Ukraine and other places, capture capital for American corporations so they can add it to their stock market. So I suppose I view Biden as being 95% support of Israel and 5% support of America, and Trump being pretty much 100% support of Israel. So I think there's a small difference there. I don't know, not much of one. But my question to you,
look,
sorry, I did want to.
you know, we can't look at the entire world through the prism of 7 million Israelis and 7 million Palestinians. Important though those areas are for me and maybe for you, but they are not in the big scheme of things all that there is. The reality is it's Biden that's dragged us to the verge of World War III, not Trump.
Yes. If I'm still on, that's correct.
Okay, yeah, you are, and we've got agreement. I like to end in agreement, Lance.
Okay,
let me go to Saad in Virginia. Well, if you're still on the line, go ahead.
Sure. I guess my question is, Iran now with this whole Saudi Arabia vengeance thing, right? I think that shouldn't Iran not really bother with Saudi Arabia because they're relatively secure on that side? I think that they should be supporting the Ukraine war more on the Russia side, because if the Ukraine falls, they'll be taken through the Caspian and through they just call it the Persian Pass or whatever in World War II. Like, they will obviously be attacked for their resources. So isn't it safer for Iran to just sort of stick with and maybe even provide actual support instead of verbal support for the Ukraine war?
Well, Iran is quite an important strategic partner of Russia now, and of China for that matter, both on the military and on the energy front. I think the danger of war between Iran and Saudi Arabia has receded in the last 7 days. I think that Russia has played a role in that, having good relations with both Iran and Saudi Arabia. And if I'm right, and Russia has played a role in defusing that tension, then it's a further indication of the geopolitical importance of Russia and of Putin. And it's the answer to the prayers of some of us also. Thanks, Lance. Let's go to Virginia and talk with Saad. Go ahead, Saad.
Hi there, Mr. Galloway. Wanted to talk about the topic of when taking out a leader of a country or nation, is it considered an act of war? Well, from the beginning of time, since ancient history, when leaders of a nation have been taken out by foreign powers, it's always been an act of war. For example, the World War I, that was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the Prince. And I was actually talking to somebody, about a year ago or 2 years ago, and I asked him this question. I said, in American law, if the President of the United States is assassinated or taken out by a foreign entity or power, it's considered an act of war. And they said yes. And then I said, what about the inverse of it? If the leader of another country is taken out by the CIA or so, is it considered an act of war? And they said to me, no, it's not. It's not. And I explained to them a brief history about Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who refused to shut down the nuclear program, and he was, quite frankly, hung after a military coup. And then Zia-ul Huq's plane that was blown up as it took off, in the 80s, and every other kid in Pakistan knows the story about these two individuals, and they were taken out. But all these things were happening in almost 100-some countries by the CIA, and people think that, by the event of 9/11, these things had happened, but these things were going on even way, way before 9/11. Even before the 80s and 70s, these things were going on. How many countries the CIA has taken out their leaders and put in a puppet and so forth? More than half the world. At least 100-some countries.
Yeah,
so what would you...
Even in Britain, Mike Pompeo was very clear that the United States would not permit Jeremy Corbyn to become the Prime Minister of Britain. Go figure. as Joe Biden's brothers would say. Speaking of Joe, here's another Joe in New Jersey. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, George. Hey, power to the people. And hey, I wanted to share with your audience there. I already know the election results, and it's not hard to figure out. But it's not a matter of the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. It's going to be, the winners are going to be the Democratic Republican Party, as it always is. It's always the same party, the Democratic Republican Party, and they've won every presidency since 1853. The last United States president who was not a member of the Democratic Republican Party, that was founded by John Adams and James Madison, has been a member of either. Hey, I wanted to bring up a second point, George, on elections. And on this whole Nazi NATO thing, this whole one world order, this rules-based order of authoritarian rule, which in my opinion is the reincarnation of Adolf Hitler's goals, dreams, and aspirations of a one world order of authoritarian rule, a one world order, a rules-based order that nobody got to vote for. And that's my question, George. When did the world's people, when was there an election that was held all around the world and elected NATO or the United States to rule the world? When was that a choice for humanity? I'll leave it to you for the rest.
Well, as President Francis Urquhart used to say, sotto voce, just off camera, democracy, it's so overrated. The idea that anyone voted for the head of the central bank, the head of the IMF, the head of the World Bank, the head of NATO, the people who rule the European Union, the fact that you can only vote for one cheek of the same backside in almost every Western country. In the United States, one of two of the parties that have spent $1 billion on the election, and that no difference, discernible difference anyway, will be noticeable in the outcome. If that's democracy, you can keep it, so far as I am concerned. You can change the name of the party, but you can't change the policy. And the policy is the dictatorship of the prevailing orthodoxy, and that prevailing orthodoxy is neoliberal economics at home and imperialism abroad. If that's democracy, as far as I'm concerned, you can keep it. Mike is in South Carolina on the U.S. elections. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, George. Good to talk to you again. I'll congratulate you again on the success of your show. But before I get started, I'd like to put a shout out to I'd like to shout out to Lester in Maryland. He was absolutely right about everything he said. Okay, and
he was great. Yeah.
I don't watch Jackson Hinkle, don't listen to him, but from the little bit of time I spent hearing him on your show, I'm certain that he's a Republican hack. He starts his show by giving a shout out.
Actually, he's a communist, Mike.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Actually, he's a communist.
well, he supports the Republican Party and the MAGA base, which he said he did, and he also gave a shout out to them at the beginning of his. Listen, George, he gave a shout out to them at the beginning.
Yeah, I'll let you back in. I'll let you back in, Mike. But you mustn't slander people by calling them Republican hacks. And when I tell you they're actually communists, just brush that aside as if that was nothing. Now, when he saluted the MAGA base, perhaps he was saluting the working class of America, which overwhelmingly backed Donald Trump in both presidential elections, as the demographic polling shows. The fact that you don't want to see that, Mike, may be more your problem than his. Go on, the floor is yours.
Okay, George. The fact is, Trump lost both elections in the popularity vote. So there's nothing that was popular about him. But when Jackson was talking about this, he actually gave a wave to the MAGA base, saying if the elections are fair and free. Well, he's just further solidifying these people's idea that the elections were not free and they were rigged.
Mike, Mike, are you really saying, Mike, that there's never cheating in American elections? Are you really saying that?
Well, George, I'm saying that the elections under which Trump lost were free and fair. It was legitimated by the courts.
Well, that's because you pick and choose. That's because, so was George Bush's election. Did George Bush cheat Al Gore out of the American presidency? I know that you think he did. That's the problem, you see. You're in favor of some cheating and against, you're in favor of calling some elections cheats and other elections not. Am I right?
No, as you should well know, the election of George W. Bush came down to only 9 votes, and those 9 votes were on the Supreme Court, and that's why he was the president, and that's why you paid the price of coming over here for your finest hour to testify before Congress because of the George Bush crime family.
Yes, quite, and we both know that he stole the election. So if Bush could steal an election, why couldn't Biden steal an election?
Because, well, first of all, Biden didn't have the resources put in place that Bush had with his brother in Florida when that state came up to be the deciding vote in the election, and they stopped the voting. They stopped the voting in Florida. But the truth is, Bush lost in Florida.
Mike, you're squirming now. No election in the United States should be automatically regarded as free and fair. You know that. Why are you now pretending otherwise?
George, I'm not saying that there's never any tampering in elections, but I can tell you that of all the 60 cases that were brought before the courts after Trump lost this election, his own judges, Trump's judges, denied him. Do you understand that?
All right, of course, we've got that you hate Trump, and we've got that you hate Jackson, whom you never listen to, except when he's on my show, and you thought he was a Republican hack, but in fact he's a communist. We've got that. What do you think is going to happen on Tuesday, Mike?
Okay, first of all, you don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday because all of the early voting that's taken place before the election, it won't be counted until late Tuesday or Wednesday. So we're standing by waiting to see what's going to happen, and I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know, and I do live in the South where most of this controversy is about a lot of the candidates that are running. But, the whole truth of it is we won't know until all the votes are counted. It's just like we didn't
if you got a prediction,
when Trump ran for president. We won't know until all the votes are counted.
Give me a prediction. I know we don't know. Give me a prediction.
I predict to you that the Republicans will take some of the seats in the House and possibly even 1 or 2 in the Senate, but it's going to be a lot closer. It's not going to be a red wave like people think it's going to be. It's going to be a lot closer than people believe.
Come back. All right,
we'll talk about it again on Wednesday.
And we'll see how right. We'll see how right or wrong you were. Lots of super chats flooding in. I'm humbled every week by this. Ian Puddock, my good friend, gives £44.99 and says, Fab Show, it's my birthday and MOATS always makes my day. Many happy returns, Ian Puddock. Happy birthday to you, and I really mean that sincerely. Amir Adam gives 20 Canadian dollars, says a big hello from Canada. Thanks, Amir. Lana A. Zenkova Garcia gives $5 and the best name of the night. Roger Asai donates $100. Roger, thank you. He says, if you go to 5 times a week, A lot of the people paid to monitor your shows and post negative or disruptive comments will be putting in for overtime pay. Well, it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good, Rog. Thanks for that super handsome donation on Super Chat. Asif Ashraf donates £1.79. Eric Chung donates £5. And on line 1 is Simon in London. Go ahead, Simon.
Hello, George. Hope you're well. There's been recently a lot of huge amount of blatant hypocrisy regarding the banning of Iran in the World Cup due to their alleged treatment of women, while some elements of the political and footballing world have also called for Iran to be replaced by, you guessed it, Ukraine, because Iran have allegedly provided drones to Russia before the current war began. Yet all the blood on the Saudi regime, including the blood of the thousands of Yemenis and that got killed in the recent war with Yemen, and the blood of Jamal Khashoggi, who their crown prince ordered to be murdered in the most brutal and abhorrent ways, forgotten and swept under the table. Now, do the Anglosphere genuinely believe that the world is sold on the idea that Iran should be banned from the World Cup, or are they afraid that in this World Cup, 2/3 of the Anglosphere countries are likely to get utterly humiliated by Iran in 2 weeks' time? Remember that Iran are a great counterattacking. They're a great counter-attacking team. Some terrific players like Azmoun and Taremi, but also, as you as a Manchester United man know, they have a tactical genius in the mind of Carlos Queiroz. And as a rule, I myself have to support the underdog team, and in this case, I'll have to be rooting for the Iran. And I won't be able to contain my my happiness as soon as Iran score when I'm watching this game in front of work colleagues. You know.
Well, that's the second best call of the night, Simon. And as a Scotsman, I'm hoping that Iran does really well in the group stages of the World Cup. And what's more, I think that they will. Hats off to Carlos Queiroz and his team, which I think will not be banned, despite the efforts of the so-called Iranian opposition to have their own country banned from the World Cup. Thanks for the call. David is in Swindon on the Nord Stream. Go ahead, David.
George. Yeah, a couple of things. First one is, my preface is I'm fed up of the term Russian playbook and false flag. I mean, we've had the Nord Stream 2 and we've had the bridge to Crimea blown up. I think the next big piece of news is going to be that dam. Is it Kherson?
Yep.
Yep. I think it's going to be that because
in Kherson, you think the dam is going to be blown?
In the Express that said that exactly that Zelensky said that Russia are going to be blowing up that dam, and I think that's going to be the next big
the Express
flashpoint.
Is that still coming out?
Yeah, it was on the Al Jazeera News. It's still.
Yeah. So you think Russia is blowing up all these things? Is that your point?
No, I don't. No, absolutely not. No. Sorry, I get a bit confused. No, why would they blow up the Nord Stream 2? Why would they blow up their bridge?
Exactly.
And why would they blow up this dam?
Exactly.
I think they're being set up again.
Yeah, but I don't think they won't succeed in blowing up the dam. They will not capture Kherson. The General Winter will lead crushing Russian counteroffensive throughout November, December, January, February. And by the spring, if they don't negotiate an end to this disastrous war, Russia will be at the gates of Kiev. Mark my words, write them down. That's exactly what I believe will happen. It's not what I want to happen. None of this is what I wanted to happen. I would like the war to end tomorrow with a negotiated settlement. But if there is no negotiated settlement, that's where we'll be come the springtime. David, thanks very much. Sven the Viking gives Swedish crown 129. I've no idea how much that is, Sven, but it's a very generous donation, I'm sure. Sven enjoys my brilliant oratory, persuasive and valuable and inspiration in these troubled times. Thank you most kindly. The poll is still going against Elon Musk. Not massively, but still going against him. William Cole gives 100 Swedish crowns. Thanks for the best talk show. Thank you, William. Mark Jordeus donated 10 British pounds. I'm a Trump supporter and I watch your show regularly. Thanks, Mark. G is on the line in Leeds about Israel. Go ahead, G.
Good evening, George.
Good evening, sir.
I've been watching this crisis with Israel and Palestine since the Second Intifada in 1983, and quickly you can see the brutality of the Israelis upon the Palestinians on the Intifada. So I supported the Palestinians since the Second Intifada in 1983. Now the two-state solutions is always going to be how do you call it? Us or them situation, because Israelis will never accept the Palestinians. The Palestinians will never accept the Israelis. So you're always going to have this hard ground between both sides. But my suggestion, which I suggested to my MP, which he ignored, is to totally scrap Israel, which he was shocked. Totally scrap Palestine, because Israel was made by the British. Palestine was made by King Hadrian, the Roman emperor. So if you scrap both states, have a new state called the Holy Land, it's always referred as the Holy Land, then both parties can accept that new state and accept each other, whether the Jewish, Christians or Muslims or any other ethnic groups can accept a new state. Because people are so entrenched by the old culture and traditions, it's easy to say that than to implement it. There's so much bloodshed on each side and so much cultural and national, sovereignty on each side. It's really hard to do. Please put on the table and put time for people to thinking the two-state solution will never work, neither would Israel or Palestine. That would scrap both of them, have a new state for everyone.
Okay. Well, at least you're thinking, G, which is more than most people are, even though your thoughts are somewhat utopian. Thanks for the call, though. Chuck is in New York on the same subject. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yes, hi, George. Thanks for everything that you do. I'm calling regarding the U.S., discussing always that whether Russia's controlling the election, China's controlling the election, the Democrats have used the Russia thing for so many years. But when it comes to Israel, they don't mention that foreign country having huge influence on the U.S. elections, either party, and the millions that are spent by them trying to get people that support Palestine out of office and not into office is really disgusting. That's about it,
Well,
George. Thank you very much.
It's not,
Go ahead.
no, thanks. First of all, it's not their money. They're not spending any money on the US elections. It's supporters of Israel, no doubt, but it's not Israel itself. Israel takes money from the United States. It doesn't put any of it back in. The reality is the American people have only got themselves to blame if they allow themselves to be led by vested interests, whether the Israel lobby, which is overwhelmingly a Christian evangelical lobby. I remind you, half of America's Jews are opposed to Israel's policies and to Netanyahu and his governments in particular. More than half, actually. It is Christian evangelicals that provide the votes and the money and the backbone for that Israel lobby, or the military lobby, or the Ukrainian lobby, or the anti-China lobby, or the anti-Russia lobby. It's the American people themselves that have to take the blame and the responsibility for that. Israel doesn't control America any more than any tail ever controls the action of any dog. Israel is the tail of the American dog, and the tail never wags the dog. Paul is in Sheffield on Pakistan. Go ahead, Paul.
Hello, George. Yes, it's Paul. I wanted to compare Pakistan with Bangladesh. Now, I could kit you out with a complete set of clothes made in Bangladesh and imported into this country. Now, I won't mention which retailers, unless they're going to advertise on your program, of course. But, you know, I can't get anything from Pakistan other than mangoes. I can get the yellow mangoes in this country from Pakistan, and that seems to be the totality of their exports. And, you know, I think Imran Khan...
I mean, it's a bit unkind. There is a fair bit of manufacturing in Pakistan. Much of it goes to China. Much of it is based on Chinese capital. But you're right. The sweated labor of Bengali children does produce a lot of clothing for the British market in particular. However, let me say in defense of Pakistan that the Pakistani kitchen is now the national kitchen of the United Kingdom. It's not fish and chips, it's not eel and mash, it's not pie and mash, it is Indian food, which is not Indian, and the restaurants are owned by Bangladeshis overwhelmingly, but the food is not Bangladeshi. The food is Pakistani, it's Lahori. Lahore, one of my favorite cities in all the world, is the best kitchen in the entire world, and it has made its cooking, its tastes, completely hegemonic in the United Kingdom. Go to in any town or village anywhere in the United Kingdom, from Land's End to John O'Groats, you will find a restaurant and many takeaways, all providing Lahori cooking. And so I myself will never lose my love for Pakistan, even if I can't buy the product of their children's sweated labor. But Pakistan has to change. And one of the ways it has to change is to put forward a better foot, a better face to the world. And that face cannot be a face of military coups and the overthrow of government after government after government, the criminalization of the last government by the next government, the pursuit into exile of its political leaders, the passing down of the torch of power within families from fathers to daughters and sons and so on. So many things have to change in Pakistan, but the most immediate thing that has to change is the removal of the American stooge government of criminals installed in the coup d'etat in March, I think, of this year. Now, a lot of people have noticed that a criminal called Matt Hancock has gone into the jungle. Not to commit harikiri, but to make a shed load of money. Now, I don't look forward to seeing Mike Hancock in the jungle. I want to see him in the dock, on trial, for crimes against the British people, for crimes against the health service, for crimes against the dead in COVID, for gross negligence and corporate manslaughter of thousands, tens of thousands of people due to his mishandling of the NHS when he was in charge of it. The secret cameras that will be on him all the time in the jungle will be as nothing to the secret cameras that brought about his downfall as a politician. And some fools have compared his appearance in the I'm a celebrity, get me out of here jungle adventure to my own decision in late 2005 and early 2006 to enter the Big Brother house. There are important differences. First of all, my money went to the Palestinian children in Gaza. It's fair to say that Matt Hancock's will not. Secondly, he is going into the jungle at the nadir of his political career. I went into the jungle at the zenith of mine, when I had just triumphed against the Labour Party, which expelled me over the Iraq War, and had been re-elected to Parliament as an independent actor, as an anti-war leader. Thirdly, I went into the Big Brother house with a message to impart to the masses which watched the show. Hancock has no message to impart. For him, this is about being able to provide for the woman who left her multi-millionaire husband, more fool her, to be his partner when he walked out on his wife and children in the aftermath of those secret cameras. I would not have eaten an elephant's scrotum, but I hope that Hancock chokes on a very large pair of elephant's balls. But if not, when he comes back, I hope we manage to put him on trial. That's all I've got time for, unfortunately. But I'll be back again on Wednesday, God willing, at 9 p.m. UK time. Please come back for the midweek MOATS and bring another viewer with you. I'm here every Sunday and every Wednesday because it's the mother of all talk shows. Good night.